Welcome in to the Saturday edition of the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. This is the day that we read the weekly newsletter that's published every weekend on MMAcycles.com by financial analyst and astrologer Ray Merriman. He has a good one for us this week, so let's dig in. First of all, a quote from the Wall Street Journal. This was from Friday. Oil prices cooled after President Trump held off on taking action against Tehran. The White House said late Thursday Trump would make a decision on whether to strike Iran within 2 weeks, a duration he often cites when faced with difficult situations, easing fears of imminent military intervention. And then this interesting quote from Friday from FoxBusiness.com. Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller said in a Friday interview on CNBC that he believes the central bank is in a position to start lowering rates starting next month. I think we're in a position that we could do this as early as July, Waller told the outlet. That would be my view, whether the committee would go along with it or not. End quote. Wow. Here are Ray's thoughts on the review section as we look back over the week past. He says our June 9th to 29th powerful cosmic configuration has stopped the advance of global stock indices right on time. On June 11th, most stock indices recorded their highest price since the mini-panic sell-off into April 7th. However, in typical Neptunian fashion, the high was not a spike, and the decline since has not yet been a real collapse. With Jupiter squaring both Saturn and Neptune July 15th through 19th, the chart pattern has been one of a broadening top formation, with both bullish and bearish forces struggling to break out, but so far resulting in a standoff of congestion. However, momentum to the upside, which had been so dominant since MMA's 3-star critical reversal date of April 21st, has run out of gas over the last 3 weeks. Are the markets exhausted and starting a serious decline? Or are they recharging and about to roar ahead in another surge upwards? ? And in Asia and the Pacific Rim, the ASX of Australia and the SSE in China, Hang Seng Hong Kong, and Nifty in India all peaked on June 11th. Most then fell to new 2-week lows. Japan's Nikkei was an exception, continuing to rally into June 18th for its highest mark in 4 months. The pattern was similar in Europe. Most interesting was the German DAX, which had made a new all-time high on June 5th, only to be followed by a drop to its lowest price in 7 weeks on June 19th. The Netherlands AEX, London FTSE, and Zurich SMI also all declined to multi-week lows on June 19th and 20th. In the U.S., it was the same story. The Dow Jones, NASDAQ, and S&P all peaked on June 11th. Each then sold off modestly into 2 to 3 week lows by Friday, June 20th. The rallies were not spectacular at their end. The declines were not spectacular either. Like Neptune, the markets seemed confused, as if in a surreal dream state, waiting for a signal to move one way or the other. Instead, they had to balance the prospect of a new major war breaking out versus the uncertainty that a still unresolved trade policy might have on economic growth. Both matters have been given a 2-week time window for a presidential decision. One market that has benefited from the outbreak of war is crude oil. In the past week, it has soared to its highest price since mid-January. Silver also rallied to a new 13-year high 1 week ago. Gold also had a nice rally, but not to new multi-year highs like silver. But, unlike gold and silver, which sold off into Friday, June 20th, crude oil has retained much of its recent gains. Perhaps it's not surprising, given that both Jupiter and Neptune rule crude oil, and their 13-year waxing square aspect was on Thursday, June 19th. The world may be in a state of confusion and uncertainty about the future, which is typical of Jupiter square Neptune, but the cosmos is not. Now this week's short-term geocosmics, an article from Thursday's Wall Street Journal, the incomparable Peggy Noonan. She says, if Mr. Trump moves boldly and it's a clear success, he's a world-class hero. Nobody loves Iran. Many want to see it humbled. If he moves boldly and it yields some kind of failure, his own supporters will never feel the same about him. If he doesn't move boldly and Tehran limps back and in time develops nuclear weapons, he will suffer with some of his base and in the eyes of the world. Presidents try hard to keep themselves from situations in which the political outcomes are so stark. They don't like those choices. Hero, politically dead. It feels like an epical decision, because it is. End quote. Here is a line from Patriot, a memoir from October 22, 2024, published by Alfred A. Knopf. The politics of an authoritarian country are structured in a very primitive way. You are either for the regime or against it. All other political options have been completely obliterated. End quote. And then from Shelter from the Storm, the poetic pen of Bob Dylan from 1975. Not a word was spoken between us. There was little risk involved. Everything up to that point had been left unresolved. Try imagining a place where it's always safe and warm. Come in, she said. I'll give you shelter from the storm. Ray's comments now on the short-term geocosmics. There are other important movements now underway in the cosmos, in addition to the powerful Jupiter square Saturn-Neptune of June 15th to 19th. For instance, Mars is now entering Virgo as of June 17th, which is an excellent combination indicating efficiency in planning. It would seem that well-thought-out military strategies, and not the bravado and machoism of Mars and Leo, will be front and center. Whoever is the smartest, most efficient, and most precise with their strikes will likely prevail this season. This week also begins summer in the northern hemisphere as the Sun moves into the sign of Cancer. It joins Jupiter, which just ingressed into Cancer on June 9th. Loyalty and patriotism are inclined to rise in social value. But the question will be asked, what exactly is patriotism? And who is a patriot? Is it one who follows the leader blindly, or who resists because they feel they are the ones defending the values of a nation? With Jupiter in Cancer just coming off its square to both Saturn and Neptune, and the Sun doing the same by translation this week, June 20th to 24th, both sides, the loyalists versus the resistors, may claim the mantle of the patriot. After this week, another surge of turbulence leading to a change of the scripts erupts July 4th through the 18th, just in time for the president's pronounced deadline on both tariffs and the future of the U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran conflict. The president has stated he doesn't want the U.S. to be dragged into a war. At the same time, he has also stated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Astrologically, Venus will conjoin Uranus as both ingress into Gemini July 4th through the 7th. Heliocentric Mercury will ingress into Sagittarius July 8th to 18th. Neptune, Saturn, and Mercury will all turn retrograde from July 4th through the 18th. So something is apt to break. Decisions will be made suddenly and probably have shock value, which can be an asset in war situations. Many of these signatures also have strong historical correlations to reversals and major moves in both stocks and metals. My guess? That the U.S. enters the war, unless Iran makes a complete and unconditional surrender regarding their nuclear ambitions. They may claim it is for peaceful purposes, but with Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune, lies and propaganda by governments and their leaders are the order of the day. The transiting lunar nodes at 19 to 22 degrees Virgo Pisces are making a grand square to the Mars-Neptune squares in the charts of both U.S. and Iran. President Trump has his natal Sun-Moon opposition at 21 to 23 Gemini Sagittarius, also in a grand square to the transiting lunar nodes. President Trump has also stated that no one knows what he's going to do. He will make his decision or decisions with maybe only a minute's notice, depending on how he feels at the moment. But with Saturn in Aries and Mars entering the precise planning sign of Virgo, I think he knows exactly what he's going to do. Maybe he just doesn't know exactly when he will act, but when his instinct says now is the time, it will be the time. And when Uranus is highlighted, as is the case in the first half of July, sudden decisions can be made that rock the world. I would expect gold, crude oil, and perhaps silver to spike up then, especially if they make a multi-week low during these next 2 weeks. So stay tuned. We're in the middle of the tornado, hurricane, tsunami now, known as the Aries Vortex. We've been preparing for this for over a year now, and here we are. You can feel it, especially with Jupiter moving into Cancer. Know your safety zones and those you trust. That's what Cancer wants and needs. It's also what Cancer can provide, shelter from the storm. And remember, this is the bottom of the abyss, the end of the cycle, which might last until early next year, 2025 into 2026, when Saturn moves past its blocking of Neptune. In conjunctions, the faster-moving planet blocks out the light of the slower one. The end of every cycle is a time for creative thought and visions. The end of a cycle is also the beginning of a new cycle, and new cycles are time for growth. And that concludes this week's newsletter. Boy, I'm glad we have a good hand on the wheel that can translate the sky to what's going on in the markets and here, obviously, in the geocosmic world around us. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend. I'll see you back on the Fun Astrology Podcast with Kristen next week, beginning on Monday.